Children who engaged in more screen time were significantly more likely to have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep. And also, they were tired during the day
Yeah.
and had just terrible sleep patterns. Hi, I'm Crystal Luce, Professor of Education.
And I'm Amy Ketchum, pediatric occupational therapist.
Welcome to Plant the Seed of Learning, the podcast where we merge education and medical models to bring you science-based practical insights on all things early childhood.
Whether you're a parent, teacher, therapist, or policymaker, we're here to help you support children from the start. So today we're going to provide a research scramble where we summarize and discuss several hot topics pertaining to screen time. Such a hot topic right now.
Yes, screens are big everywhere. They're in classrooms today with teachers trying to use screens less and pen and paper more. They're on the minds of parents as they determine appropriate limits for their children. So you're not kidding. It is a hot topic.
Yeah.
We're going to start off by talking about a study by Radesky and colleagues. And in this study called Overstimulated Consumers or Next Generation Learners, they talk about parent tensions
Such a good
pertaining,
title.
yeah, to technology usage.
Yeah.
And they're really hitting hard the notion of mobile technology and its impact on family life.
Uh-huh.
And you see this even when you're out to dinner in restaurants.
Yeah.
The devices come everywhere, and there's less conversation than ever during meal times. So, in this study, they looked at groups and individuals, and they did interviews. And in the results, they concluded that technology was interfering with family life. So some of
Mhm.
the themes included effects on the child because there's a fear of missing out.
Mhm.
Another theme was locus of control, wanting to use digital devices in beneficial ways, but feeling that the rapidly evolving technologies are beyond their control.
Yeah.
And then the third area was family stress, the
Mhm.
necessity of device use and stressed families, because we are all stressed when we have those young children
Yeah.
and we feel we need to use those devices to help us. But
Mhm.
then sometimes there's displacement of family time.
Mhm.
So it's huge. It's a real thing.
It's huge and it is so hard. And I feel so bad for young families that know the data and they're really trying to do the right thing. I mean, I can
Yeah.
remember when we got our first minivan when my daughters were little and it had the flip down TV screens.
Yes.
And oh my gosh, they just thought it was the greatest thing ever. And they thought they were going to be watching Dora the Explorer every time we ran to the post office. So we put
Yeah.
rules in place. My husband and I decided the screens only come down for a trip that's an hour or longer because, we were trying to keep it to a minimum and keep it just for when we were on a big long trip. And
Yeah.
you really tire of the fights every time we get in the car. Please, please, how long are we going to be in the car? Like just begging for that screen. So I know the struggle
Crazy.
is real. I know it is really, really hard um, to fight that fight. So let's talk back to this article. Let's talk about some of the key points that came up. So they did find um, that mobile and interactive media have really transformed digital play for children.
Mhm.
So it impacts their access to platforms, content, parental mediation. When they have this ability to access pretty much anything in the palm of their hands, that's very scary for parents. So,
It is
do
scary.
we trust the parental controls? So, we know that well-designed TV programs and interactive media can be educational for preschoolers and children under 2. We also know that it does require adult interaction for the children to actually learn from any media on the screen. So that
Yeah.
requires a parent sitting beside them, pointing out, what did he just say? What are we learning from this? What do you think is going to happen next? Really kind of
Mhm.
reiterating the lessons they're getting from the screen. And again,
Especially for those children under two. Children
yes,
under two really need an adult beside them when they're engaging with screen usage.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, We do know interactive media can engage children effectively, but digital features may also distract from learning objectives. So when it's a show where there's like a lot of quick cuts in and out, and I know we talk about this a lot, but that is really important how that affects a child's brain. Where, when you think about something like Mr. Rogers, where it has a very slow cadence and a slow pace to the speech, and the storyline develops slowly, and a child can engage and really follow the content versus um, some of these almost often made by AI YouTube programming
Mm,
where
mhm,
it's just these quick little snippets of
mhm.
stimulation for children where they're not following a storyline. That can be, we know that literally can affect the matter of their brain.
Yeah.
We know that excessive or inappropriate media exposure poses health and developmental risks. It includes sleep issues, which we're going to talk a little bit more about. It adds to obesity, developmental delays, impaired executive functioning, and increased aggression in some
Mhm.
children. So, some pretty significant detrimental effects of excessive screen time. And we know that pediatric providers can assist parents by kind of helping to translate that research and the findings that are out there and offer some suggestions, which we're also doing today.
Mhm. And well, I haven't been to a well visit with a young child in a long time, but I
Right.
wonder how frequently this is discussed.
Uh-huh.
And what is really necessary, if it's not discussed, is to bring it up to your provider so they can give you feedback and suggestions.
Yeah.
Because, as you mentioned earlier, sometimes kids throw tantrums because they want their technology. So it's important to find ways to move
Yeah.
beyond the tech and into some play with
Yeah.
handheld things. Yeah.
Finding that middle ground can be so hard. And I think it depends so much on the healthcare professional and the health system they're in.
Yeah.
They have all these requirements and they have how many patients they need to see per day and get them in and out. And
Oh, yeah.
if they're there for an ear infection or some developmental concern, there may not
Hmm.
be time to discuss screen time.
Yeah.
When they have those productivity demands, as we all know about in healthcare,
That's very
get
true.
super
Very
challenging. Yeah.
well, oftentimes in those visits, sleep is discussed. So we
Yeah.
wanted to touch upon sleep today. Sleep is often a worry among parents because it's essential for child health and development. And also, parents need their children to sleep so they can sleep.
Uh-huh.
So there's a group of researchers, Laborges and colleagues, and they looked at digital media and sleep in childhood and adolescence. And the reasoning behind this is because there's intense use of screen-based media, and they're linking it to insufficient sleep among American youth and teenagers.
Mhm.
So, in this brief, they summarize the literature on electronic media and sleep, and they provide recommendations. So, when they looked at this, when they performed the study, they did a review of literature. And the vast majority of studies were finding an adverse association between screen-based media consumption and sleep. They looked at time displacement, so time spent on screens, replacing time spent sleeping, the
Mhm.
psychological stimulation based on the media content, the effects of the effects of the light
Mhm.
emitted from the devices and how that influences the circadian rhythm, and then, of course, alertness. So, a great overview, a great systemic review on literature. There's also another study that tells us more about sleep among preschoolers, and this is Waller and colleagues, and they looked at screen time use and how it impacts low-income preschool children's sleep quality, tiredness, and the ability to fall asleep. So, another great study where screen time is impacting our youngest, the preschoolers. And so we need to find alternatives to screen time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of parents think that screen time only affects sleep if the child is on a screen right before they go to bed. But we're finding
Mm,
throughout the
mhm,
day, like it really
mhm.
can affect how well the child sleeps when used throughout the day.
Wow.
And as an occupational therapist, we view sleep not simply as something that happens when a child is tired, but it's a vital occupation that really
Mm,
supports every other occupation of childhood. If they're
yeah.
not well rested, their play is going to be affected, and their relationships are going to be affected, and their learning is going to be affected. So when sleep is disrupted, it can really also affect emotional regulation, their social participation, and their overall development. So we really need to consider sleep as the foundation that supports brain development, sensory processing, attention, like I said, the self-regulation, learning, emotional well-being. So when sleep suffers, everything else becomes harder, especially for the youngest babies. I know in the NICU, we protect sleep at all costs. We put babies on a schedule as soon as they come into the NICU, and they
Mm,
only get their cares every 3 hours. So they get fed, they get their diaper change, fed, any blood work needs to be done, anything that needs to be done within a 20 to 30 minute period of time. And then for a full 3 hours, their sleep is protected. Nobody touches the
mm,
baby. And I think that is a great philosophy to try to bring home, to really, really protect that sleep, protect nap time, do what we need to do throughout the day so that children get a good night's sleep, because that's when their brain really develops in those early years.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
And in that study that
yeah.
we're discussing on the preschool children, they talk a lot about how it confirms prior associations between screen time and sleep
Mhm.
in pediatric populations. And they even controlled for children's age, race, parental income, and children who engaged in more screen time were significantly more likely to have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep. And also, they were tired during the day
Yeah.
and had just terrible sleep patterns.
Yeah. And this was a good size study, 1,700 preschool age children.
Yes.
Um, so they really had a nice sample size here. Yeah.
Yeah, they truly did. It was good. A good.
Yeah, so this is a good opportunity to talk a little bit about sleep hygiene. I don't
Yeah.
know if our listeners are all familiar with that term. We talk about it a lot in therapy, sleep hygiene, just sort of relating to the routines, the habits, the environmental factors that promote healthy sleep. And it's not just for children. We talk about sleep hygiene for adults as well. So it's
Mm,
sort of thinking about, what do you do throughout the day that's going to promote good sleep at night? And again, it's not just about bedtime, it's about everything that happens throughout the day. So when
oh.
we talk about good sleep hygiene for babies, I think the most important thing would be consistency, consistent routines that the baby can count on,
Hmm.
so that they know what to expect and they feel comfortable and they feel safe. When their routine is not consistent and they never know what's happening next, they're at a little higher level of adrenaline and anxiety, and it's harder to come down and, feel more calm. So we want to, for babies, really think about a sleep friendly environment, which is a dark room, cool temperature, minimal noise. We want that predictable schedule for babies with consistent naps, consistent bedtime. Now, obviously, babies' schedules change, so you're going to have days where they don't nap as well or they're disrupted, and that happens, but trying to be as consistent as possible is really helpful.
Hmm.
We want to think about that responsive caregiving that we talk about so often, helping babies learn cues that bedtime is approaching. So maybe you do a bath every night before bed, or read a book every night before bed, or do a little baby massage before bed, something that they start to understand that it's time to wind down.
Hmm.
Babies are start to understand cause and effect as early as 3 weeks. So I've seen babies calmed just by smelling the smell of the lotion before the mom even puts their hands on the baby to do the massage, because they sort of know it's coming, because they start to equate that smell with that calming sensation of getting a massage. So thinking about that sort of responsive caregiving of what can I do every day to let my baby know that bedtime is approaching and it's time to wind down. When we talk about good sleep hygiene for preschoolers, again, we want consistency. We want a bedtime routine. Think about maybe bath, put your pajamas on, brush your teeth, read a story, and then lights out. So it's predictable and they know what to expect. Also, for toddlers, we want lots of physical activity during the day. We want them to be active and playing, moving around, outdoor play, lots of different sensory experiences, because that's going to make them feel more tired by the end of the day. And they'll, be able to settle into sleep a lot better. So we should talk a little bit about some of the guidelines set by the American Academy of Pediatrics when it comes to screen time,
Mhm.
screen time in general and as it relates to sleep. Um, it can be tempting to want to set a number of hours on screens that is safe or healthy to guide families with their technology use, but unfortunately, there's not enough evidence that demonstrates a benefit from a very specific screen time limitation guidelines. So, for this reason, the American Academy of Pediatrics updated their media use recommendations in 2016, and they used evidence and data to decide that the guidelines are not giving a set screen time limit that applies to all children and teens, um, because there's many different kinds of interactions with technology that are happening out there. So instead, they're recommending considering the quality of the interactions with digital media and not just the quantity or the amount of time. So it's really important to consider the specific activities that children are engaging in on, their devices or on a screen. We want to have co-viewing as much as possible. The American Academy is still recommending little to no screens before the age of 2, just because of that data that children are not learning from screens at that age, unless it's like FaceTiming with a family member or it's
Mhm.
co-viewing with a parent where the parent is engaging with the child throughout the co-viewing experience. And then after that, for 3 to 5, it's just parent discretion, but really focusing on ensuring that it is quality screen time and that it's not going to be overstimulating for that little developing brain.
Ooh, I'm so glad we have those guidelines
Yeah.
because many of us look to the Academy for guidance when we're looking at a number of child development aspects.
Yeah. And
So
we'll
it's
put that link in our show notes too, so
good.
parents can look at that directly. Yeah.
Um, One more study that actually connects to many of the things you just talked about was done by Domoff and colleagues, and it is a naturalistic study of child and family screen media and mobile device usage. And they suggest parent mediation of screen media, so television and video games, is associated with better outcomes for children, which makes sense. Of course, parent mediation of many things is a great thing. Although there's a lot of research that looks at parent mediation of TV, there's not a lot of research examining communication about mobile media. So, everything we've been talking about, smartphones and tablets. And this is shocking because we're in this great digital age. So,
Yeah.
this study was done in 2019. So, I'm sure since then much has been investigated, but this study in particular was interesting because it looked at family communication and it was with toddlers, so 12 to 24 months, preschool children, and 10 to 13-year-olds and their families. So, several themes emerged. First was that parent mediation of screen media was primarily restrictive, reactive, and focused on technology functionality. The second was the active mediation was child driven. And the third was siblings played a more dominant role in mediation than parents. I could see that in
Mm-hmm.
my family.
Mm-hmm.
And fourth, parents and children negotiated screen time limits. I see that happening frequently.
Yeah.
And finally, and this is very interesting because this is what we see when we're out to dinner, parallel family media usage was very common. So,
Yeah.
what children see is what they do.
Yeah.
Multiple family members are often engaged in using their phones. So this can be problematic. I don't know how we can start moving away from that. I think everything in the media right now about screen time will influence this. I'm hoping we're going to see a lot of changes in the amount of screens and devices being used, and going back to old school, where we pull out the bag of tricks when we're at the restaurant and children are coloring and engaging in other ways.
Yeah. I'm
Um,
seeing that. I think the pendulum is
yeah,
starting to swing back the other way. I mean, there's definitely an awareness.
yeah,
Parents know, and they're trying so hard,
they
and
are.
they want that engagement. They want, they want to be engaging with their kids without a screen in front of their face. So
Yeah.
I think there's definitely some pushback, and we're starting to see coming out the other side, I think.
Yes, there are so many alternatives to screen time. So when we think about STEAM, and that's science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, all of that can be brought along in a bag.
Mhm.
STEM has emerged as a key area of importance for children. Um, we can integrate science, technology, engineering, and math in so many educational ways, and that's why it is so, so important. There is so much information right now in the research about STEAM and how it holds so much relevance to learning and experience in the early childhood years and across the lifespan. So, so important to consider this when we're finding activities for our young children to do at home, in the car, at restaurants. Consider ways to integrate not just technology, but
Yeah.
science activities, engineering activities. So bring those Legos along or bring those magnetiles along. The art's
Yeah.
so easy to bring crayons or cleanable markers. I also found finger paint
Mhm.
markers that are fantastic
Oh, great.
because it's like a new way to draw.
Yeah.
And of course, math. Math you can integrate in so many ways
Yeah.
by just bringing little trinkets and having conversations about more or less.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Even if you forget your bag of tricks. We used to play these games when we were in restaurants with our daughters when they were little. Like, we would put every item that we had in the middle of the table, like some sugar packets and a spoon and something I had in my purse. And we would cover it all with the napkin and say, everybody close your eyes. And one person was in charge of removing one item and then pulling off the napkin and what's missing. We would play the what's
Oh, I
missing game.
love that.
And it was such a great short-term memory and visual
Yeah.
scanning, and like there were so many great things you could do. And I remember playing once with my nephew when we were didn't have anything to play with. I just grabbed a bunch of there were sugar cubes and there were stirrers, and I had my gave him exactly what I had, and then I built a structure and he had to copy it exactly. There's just
Oh,
if you just use a little creativity and engage with the child, you can make things really fun.
yeah.
Even if you don't have a bag of tricks and resources, you could play I Spy. You can make predictions of who's going to walk through the door next. Like, there's just so many things you can do to keep a child engaged without handing a screen.
So true. I love your suggestions. You're much braver than I. We did not go out to dinner very frequently with four young
Oh, you had
children.
four.
We
Yeah.
just weren't brave enough. I do remember when I had my first child, we went out to dinner and I thought, this is great. I'm going to feed him before we go to dinner. And during dinner, he projectile vomited everywhere.
Oh, my God.
I'm like, I don't know how much I enjoy going to dinners anymore.
Welcome to parenthood. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy. And there are times when you just need to hand them your phone. Absolutely.
exactly.
There are times, and
Right.
no judgment. We all have been there.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah,
if you're feeling like you wish your child was engaging more, there's always some tips and tricks.
sure.
Yeah. So we like to end every episode with a tip that our listeners can try tomorrow. So, three easy tips that sort of sum up what we discussed today. Think about replacing screens with connection whenever you can. Think about books you could read, conversations you can have, songs you can sing, maybe just cuddle. Come up with a game on the fly. Um, preserve sleep, thinking about turning screens off at least 60 minutes before bed, really limiting screens in the second half of the day, and create that consistent bedtime routine. Whether it's a newborn baby or a teenager, consistency is key. So really think about those things if you can. And I think too, I have to add, I think, we're not necessarily anti all screens. We're just pro sleep and we're pro connection. That's that's the point we definitely want to get across.
I totally agree.
All right. Well, thank you for listening to Plant the Seed of Learning. We want to thank our guests, past and present, for sharing their knowledge and work. A special thank you to our producer, Penn Ketchum. You can find our podcast wherever you listen on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. We can't wait to learn from you and plant more seeds of learning together.